All right. This is Soundwaves coming at you live all the way from the lower bottoms of West Oakland. And today we have our first ever Soundwaves guest. We have the, should I say president and CEO?
Yeah, that works. Boss, owner. It's weird because I'm not, I don't actually hold any authority over anyone. So, you know, a lot of those words have a lot of that weight behind them. And,
is it a socialist label?
I mean, the all the proceeds get spread out amongst the workers.
Hell yeah.
So
That's kind of the definition, right?
It kind
you
of
seize
does.
the means of production and you distribute.
Yeah, I've actually been looking at how we distribute the funds lately based on digital sales, because the reference point I've always had to like sharing the profits was 50-50. You know, that was kind of a holdover from the labels I read about in the 90s that were like seemed like that was the way to do it, right? So that always checked out to me. But now with the digital stuff, there's 4 or 5 guys in a band and I'm one guy at the label. That 50-50 doesn't seem right to me anymore. So I'm actually starting to look at that even.
Well, let me let you guys know
we're
who's
sharing
talking.
even farther.
We're talking to, is it Scotty
Heath.
Scotty Heath, the owner of Tankcrimes Records.
Yeah, we got way ahead of ourselves in that introduction.
That's dope.
Figuring out what my title is.
That's dope, though. That means that it's live and it's raw. Yeah. So usually we start the show with the Why You Should Care segment, and since Scotty is constantly pressed for time, we're gonna just get right into our interview with Scotty. A big reason why I wanted to have Scotty on this show is because we do broadcast live here at Soundwave Studios. Where is it? 2 of your bands or one of your bands are here?
Well, Ghoul is the flagship band of the label.
Oh, wow.
And they call themselves the crown jewel of the Tankcrimes universe. And you know, so this has been their home for 20 years. So, and then Impaled shares that room too, which is not a Tankcrimes band, but I've done records with, you know, it's certainly the family. I mean,
you've done records for, was it 100 releases?
I'm on I think the stuff that's going into production right now is like number 117 and 118.
117 releases.
Yeah.
I got hip to Tankcrimes. We were saying this earlier off air, coming to Soundwave about 6 years ago, and there is some amazing artwork that is littered throughout the Soundwave walls, from mostly Ghoul and shows they did with other label mates, the Toxic Holocaust, I think.
Yeah, I tend to keep a lot. I mean, when I started doing the label, I started booking shows like at the same time. They were both out of the same necessity for the bands I was in and the bands I was working with. And that went from building up kind of the reputation by booking a lot of touring bands shows, and has now, because of the amount of time I have, has kind of become like label showcases like twice a year.
Which are, from what we see, pretty big draws here in the Bay Area.
We've sold out, doing what we call the Tankcrimes Takeover, we've sold out Gilman, sold out Eli's, sold out DNA Lounge, sold out Oakland Metro.
That's something
so
to be
that's
proud of.
huge. It's such an honor to me because people in the Bay don't know how in other places people don't know who we are as much. If you're only from here, you know, but I think that's probably what's most important to me.
Now, here's something that hopefully makes you chuckle, and hopefully the Ghoul guys listen to this. Part of what I do in my 9-to-5 life is boring tech shit at music festivals.
Okay.
So I get to wear what I want, and Sean, one of the members from Ghoul.
The fourth wall is exploded when I'm around because I don't play these behind the mask games. These are like my best friends.
I try,
and everyone knows that. I do love that about Ghoul is that that's the personas and like
Yeah.
they don't look at you in the eye and be like, "No, motherfucker, I eat people." It's not like some black metal shit, you know?
No,
They're like, yeah, my whole shtick is I eat people, right? It's thrash.
And they're funny
So
people.
if you're like, if you're accidentally to like say their name, it's not like
I've definitely been responsible for making their practice last too long by like hanging out with them and talking. And I had to unfortunately turn down a Ghoul tour because I did have to do some work, some festival work. But I had a Ghoul shirt on. I want to say it like Coachella,
okay.
Which is not the Ghoul audience you would think.
Get us on Coachella.
I wish I had that pull.
Hook it up. Hook it up.
I'll say this much. The guy that books is a little more into rock music than people think.
Yeah, sure. Everyone's a little more into rock music than people think. People are like, no good bands won a Grammy. It's like, man, people still like guitar music. People still like guitar music.
To that point, I actually wrote some questions out, and you got me jumping around because there were questions I wanted to ask you about that. In a day and age where, and we're around the same age, heavy music is not what it was in the 80s and 90s as far as record sales overall.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that Guns N' Roses, Metallica level bands.
Yeah, those bands are called Guns N' Roses and Metallica. They're still the two top touring artists.
They still are the
in
two
the
top
fucking
touring
world.
artists.
Yeah. But you're right.
but
There's no hot band that's like going to go out with GNR
No.
and people care.
Who can go out with GNR that's younger?
Nobody,
to that
and
level?
nobody really.
Foo Fighters?
Yeah, but even that, it doesn't. There's not a scene like that. You're right.
No.
There's not.
And working music festivals, large music festivals, I get to be privy to some of those conversations where they say, well, we want to go more electronic heavy, or do we want to go more country heavy? Because those are the things that people want to see. I also work in live music quite a bit at bigger venues.
That's why I spend my summers in Europe.
Where they have
all the
huge
festivals are metal. Yeah.
Wacken and all that cool
Yeah.
stuff where there's like 100,000 people.
I hosted a beer bong party in one of the tents at Wacken, and the tents hold like 6,000 people. It was like some stunt Earache Records did, where Municipal Waste was like DJing, and they got us like 50 cases of beer, and we had this giant monster beer bong that Guar made for us, and I was just pouring beers standing on the barricade, just passing out beers
Jesus.
for everyone.
That's awesome.
That was my Wacken experience.
What, do you know how many years ago that was?
That was 2008, I think. It was a long time ago.
How
They
do
need
you-
to invite us back?
How do you feel about? We know Europe has bigger metal festivals because your bands go over there and play, and also the older '80s bands. I told you this was Third Eye Blind's room, but also Testament is still here. The Exodus guys are still here. Faith No More is still here, and those guys definitely have a huge presence overseas.
Yeah, big time.
How does it affect? I shouldn't say that. How do you look at it when you go to Germany and see these huge in Poland and see these huge festivals and your band's playing bigger rooms, and you come back to the States and you're playing definitely smaller rooms and clubs?
Well, that's really the festival season. Because when I tour Europe with Municipal Waste, we're still playing, like, they'll come here and headline the Metro or Slims. And if we're in Germany in the wintertime, they'll play like a place like the Metro or Slims, and draw that same, 800 people or whatever to a gig. What I see in the metal, it's not just the metal culture, it's the entire culture in Europe, which was why I think metal still thrives better over there, is there's something that's very, I didn't realize it until I started traveling, but very American about leaving pieces of your youth behind when you grow up. I used to go to shows, but now I have a kid. I used to go out dancing all the time, but now I have a job. what I see in Europe that's a lot more culturally acceptable, and it's another thing where like we forget that American, like, we're the prudes, you know, because we think we're so cool, and we are really cool, but we're really prude, you know. We came from like the people that didn't want to give blowjobs, so they came across a whole ocean to start a new society, and then like Ben Franklin went back to France and was like, oh shit, you guys, they got blowjobs. He brought them back to America. So what I see in Europe is a grown person on the train coming home from work in business attire, perfectly comfortable, talking to their coworkers and their friends and family and being like, "Oh, I'm going to go home off the train. I'm going to get some dinner. I'm going to change into my metal vest and my jeans, and I'm going to go headbang tonight and have some beers. And I might be a little hungover at work tomorrow, but I'm going to shave and put on my suit and get back on the train in the morning."
Do you think there is a bit of a stigma about heavy music being a little bit juvenile and, I mean, to your comment about the vestiges of our youth that we want to leave behind, is there something to be said about heavy music kind of... I'm the same age as a lot of the bands that I like and go see, so I don't think it's just music for children because I know grown-ass men are performing.
Well, we grew up on it, so it's different. It's like heavy metal's, 45 years old. You know, everything that dominates our culture right now as... how old are you?
I'll be 43 this year.
I turned 42 a couple days ago, so
Happy birthday.
we grew up on this shit.
Yeah.
And to me, like, everything cool that's relevant to me kind of popped off around the same time in the mid and late 70s. Everything that dominates our pop culture now, even if we're thinking of heavy metal and punk as a really small thing in part of the bigger picture. So it's hard to say because things change so much. The people that I know in the States that are the movers and shakers, including the fans at shows, aren't teenagers. They're not even 21. They're 25 to 35. 25 to 35 is like my main audience with
Really?
Tankcrimes. Yeah, for sure. And it even skews from that more up to like 40 than down to 18.
So we often have these, one reason, there's a couple reasons why this podcast started. But one reason why I started is because we had these very interesting conversations in the van on tour. And the conversation with the band of our stature is always like, how do you cut through the noise of the internet, social media, locally playing shows? How do you get people out?
More opportunities than ever for nobody to know who the fuck you are or care.
Right? Isn't there?
Right? You know, exactly, yeah. I mean, it's the great equalizer, but in being equalized, you're reminded that you're so small.
So let me add, and this was one of the questions I wrote down. So in the day and age of anyone can release a record, anyone can get distribution for $20 and have it on every...
You can be in everyone's phone.
Yes.
If you have a recorded song and $20.
And $20, I think it is, to get the distribution pack and get a barcode and all that other good stuff. What possessed you in this day and age to try to start a label? Not even to try, to start a label, knowing that you're in a different landscape than, let's say, SST Records in the 80s, where there wasn't the overflowing amount of so many independent labels of so many different genres of music?
Well, when I started in the early 2000s, so I have always existed in I never saw a CD boom of the 90s.
Gotcha.
By the time I started, the labels that I admired were all hurting bad because CD sales were down. Vinyl was starting to come back little by little. I was only interested in vinyl at the time. We were still a few years before digital music, what we know right now. Like when I started the label, we would just put our records on LimeWire for people to download.
LimeWire.
You know, and then we had I remember I still have the same layout design and web guide that I had when I started. And I remember him figuring out how to put like an MP3 on the web page, you know, like the one you could listen to, and then figuring out how we could do a download link from there or whatever. But
So you love the new internet.
yeah, well, I mean, that was all promotion for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted someone to be able to come to my website and listen to a song. So they would, because this is how things go. There was like, people forget that the internet existed before YouTube and before PayPal and before. So like, that was a point where I wanted someone to come to my website to listen to a song, but then they still had to send me $3 to my P.O. box for me to send them the 7-inch. So there was this time where fast met slow and new met old. When I started the label, I did a lot of, I bought a button machine, a 1-inch button machine was my first investment into having like a side hustle to create money to do the DIY job I wanted to do. And so I was doing bootleg buttons, and that morphed into screen printing t-shirts. But the first income the label had was selling 1-inch buttons on eBay. So eBay was invented.
Wow.
But PayPal wasn't invented yet. eBay before
I remember
PayPal
that when
was
you had
a
to mail
wild
payments.
thing.
I used to have to mail payments. I remember that. Yeah.
So I would go down to this is when I lived in San Francisco, and
Thanks, Peter Thiel.
My P.O. box would be stuffed with money orders in cash every day. But I was doing online sales, and then it's even like I still had a ledger. Because like eBay wasn't keeping good records of stuff, and I didn't know how to do any kind of Excel or I mean, I still don't, but I don't think anyone who uses eBay right now, like, I was like writing out, you know, like the auction number.
You had to.
And the thing.
I
and
remember
you
that.
know, the username of fucking, you know, Porno Grind 69 who fucking just bought, you know, 3 napalm death buttons off me.
Speaking of napalm,
For $1, which went into, you know, the next big project I was doing.
so you actually remind me a lot of, I don't know how active you are on social media other than Twitter, which is where we quote unquote met. The Earache Records, I don't know if he's still the president, but he does a thing on Instagram and he answers people's questions.
Al Dawson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watch it.
And I think I was saying over the last month or so,
He's been heavily active recently, right? Like,
Yeah,
he popped him off a few before, but now I think he's trying to do one every day in the office, it seems like.
very, very active. And he started off him telling stories about the early days of Earache and meeting bands, which was cool. And then he started answering the questions about basically, how do I become famous? Is the constant question he's asked. And he gives a very honest answer that man can give.
Oh, I read
Because
his
he
stuff,
came up at a
or I listen to his stuff, and I would answer a lot of those things differently. But that's part of our experience. He's got 10 more years experience on me in the business, and he was doing stuff when bands were making money. And to Earache's credit, I know that they have a bad rep sometimes, artist friendly wise, but that is a career building label.
Jesus, yeah.
They absolutely, and I've seen it firsthand versus other labels, the amount of energy that they put into a band to get press, to get on the places, to get like they were really inspiring. And then even that Al's now doing Q&A on Instagram, that's pretty cool.
And he's answering pretty, you know, high school band guy questions like how do I get on a show and how do I get on with a bigger band?
Those questions never go away. Those are always the questions. How do I get a show? How do I? There's a lot of, you know, some things that seem really obvious after you know them. You know, sometimes it's just like that. You know, I mean, and here's the thing in music is that a lot of people will, for better or for worse, and this is kind of like taking your lumps coming in. A lot of people, and maybe this is everywhere, but this is my experiences all in music. A lot of people will watch you fuck up and snicker to their buddies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, hey man, like there's a better way, it's smarter way, and like the way to do that no one told you yet.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting about that? I feel like your peers don't necessarily always give you that good advice.
They don't.
The best advice and the nicest people that I've met have always been generally OGs, like the OGs here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking like the Faith No Mores and all those guys have actually literally lent me gear
Yeah.
to continue to record and keep going. And then good people that you meet on the road that may have a bit of a following.
But everyone's not going to necessarily help you out when you're fucking up, and that's not
Yeah.
malicious either. Some people sometimes, like I've worked with bands where this is out on the road, where I have to weigh as we get into the tour if I am invested enough in the people in the band to educate them.
That's fair.
And I'm very open and fair about a lot of stuff, but even then it's like I kind of got to, what's my energy worth,
Yeah.
And then, but that's what's so cool, back to what Al's doing and what I try to do with social media is just tell so people don't have to ask. Just be there to say it to them so you can learn ahead of time.
And you say some pretty interesting things when it comes to just going out there and doing it, because I think there's another thing. Even we get asked, as small as we are, how do you guys go out there and tour? I was like, well, I took a loan against my car so we could do this last tour.
Yeah. Or just like, well, who booked it?
Well, we did.
Yeah. Well, how'd you do that? Like,
I call people. Like, I'm from the days of having to
years
print out
of
the
talking to people.
the MapQuest,
MapQuest
or
in
call
the car,
the
we
venue.
had the binder. My first tours we had MapQuest, but we didn't have cell phones. My second tour we had a cell phone that you could only use on emergencies. And then it wasn't until my 10th tour and then now everyone's just like watching porno on their phone.
Yeah, they're just doing it. Oh, yeah. But my last project was my now ex-wife and I, but we would do about 75 to 100 shows a year.
That's active.
We tried to be. Mm-hmm. You know why? No bullshit. Because I wanted people like you to eventually see who the fuck we were and be like, God damn, these guys play a lot of shows.
It's smart.
Yeah.
But you know who did see us was Justin Broderick.
Nice.
Seeing us, took us on tour. That came from playing all those goddamn shows. But we got to the point where we were like, we hated the phones and we bought a map.
Yeah.
And the map saved us from getting stuck in shitty towns. Because, your map question does have you go on those highways.
Yeah.
Not the interstates, but the highways where you're going through the town where you got to stop. Remember you got almost got the ticket?
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck are you guys doing going on?
Yeah, speed traps, man.
Don't look on the MapQuest, dude. Just stay on the interstate.
Yeah, no, Jason's been teaching me a lot about driving on the highway and driving state to state.
We got pulled over so much, that's why.
Well, now people turn on their GPS to go somewhere they've been 100 times in their town.
Yeah, that's
my pet
ridiculous.
peeve. That's my pet peeve. Because I'm still old to remember a time where you had to remember how to get somewhere. Mm-hmm. Landmarks.
How many phone numbers do you know besides your own?
In 2020,
You probably remember a
Now,
couple
like,
of your
two.
old phone
the
numbers.
one here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know
right,
the number to
right.
Soundwaves.
Only because you've had to tell people.
And I
so
know
many
my
times.
grandmother's old house number that doesn't exist anymore.
Those are the kind of numbers I remember. I remember
Yeah.
my grandma's number. I remember a couple old house numbers I had.
But I used to be able to fire off phone numbers.
Oh, yeah.
Before cell phones, the pager days and the early days
It
of
was
cell
easier
phones.
to remember back then. Because, I
don't
don't know,
know.
your brain worked differently. You just knew you had to remember a phone number.
Dude, it's so the
Yeah, I'm
way
glad you said differently. Because
Yeah.
I think some people say brains worked better, and I don't necessarily agree, but it definitely worked differently.
Yeah.
But I think also you just like, it's like the path of least resistance. Like
Yeah.
it's almost like, my brain only wants to store so much stuff that I have ready access to. I don't need these anymore.
it's a quick
Fucking
forget.
move it over.
Yeah.
Move it to the side. I got other shit I want to remember.
The way to store
I got to
that-
remember all my fucking passwords now. I gotta remember my passwords and I keep forgetting and then they keep making me changing and I got to remember what letter I capitalized or how many exclamation points I added at the end or did I put 69 or 420 or
Did you see
666?
Ice-T had redid Institutionalized?
Oh yeah, I saw that.
And that's the whole thing. It's about the passwords.
Is that one of his rants is about the password too? Yeah, I forgot that detail.
I was shocked that he redid that song, but I get it. He's a punk fan.
Oh yeah, no, that totally made sense to me.
Now, you come from the punk world as well
Mm-hmm.
as the metal world. I think those two things were not too far off.
I was
our-
like punk got me into metal and there was definitely a time when I was listening to punk and hardcore and didn't really listen to metal at all. And like I kind of actually am like, even though I came 10 years later, like I like classically like crossover really crossed me over.
Like DRI?
Yeah. I started hearing Raw Power and in the later DRI stuff, and then I slowly was like, I'm okay with a guitar solo. And then I'd be like, I'm okay with a little double kick.
And now you're like releasing metal bands.
Yeah. I mean, it just evolves. I mean, you know, I am still working with the same people. They just, and what I think happens with hardcore punk especially is that it's a really an entry level music genre for a musician.
Interesting.
That's why it's really great music for youth, because it's really the kind of music. It's like, okay, drummer, can you count to 4? Okay, cool. Now count to 2. You know, go. You know, guitar guy, you know, 3 chords, you know, go from there.
You got it.
It's really
You're a rhythm guy.
that. Oh, singer, it's just shouting, whatever you can yell, however it comes out of your throat. So that's a good like entry level band, and I just understand a musician moving towards heavy metal and traditional rock sounds from hardcore, simply because
they're just better players now.
Yeah, because you want to count to more than 4. You know. Like, you know, there's something, you know, there's just different things. And I can see, you know, not everyone, you know, like Vinny Stigma still plays hardcore in his 60s.
Which is a great documentary.
I love that documentary. It's a great, and that's a great influence, but it almost like his greatest influence, I think, is his attitude. And that attitude goes along with just playing hardcore. This is what I do. This is what's fucking fun. I found my fucking spot. Hardcore fucking rules. That's a place too.
Do you think that keeps do you think that keeps an artist from growing, or even a fan base from growing?
Well, I mean, it can go both ways. It really depends. I mean, when you grow as a band, I have this like formula that I'm always like working on and tweaking, but the way I say it is every time you double your fan base, you have to lose like 10% off the back end.
That makes sense.
And these are just fans that don't want to share the bands they like with too many people, or they're, you know, really just indebted to the underground and stuff like that. And even when you're like, we're too big for you. Like, we just played for like 35 people. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, 300 people stopped by our Spotify last month. Like, we're not, but there's different levels of that, you know?
Yeah. The perception that people think about a band that may have like a large Facebook fan base or what seems to be a large Spotify fan base, but they're still, you know, make pizza 5 days a week.
Yeah, and that really just is usually younger people who are naive, or older people who are also naive.
Or jealous, you think?
I mean, I don't spend too much time like dissecting that kind of stuff, but sometimes it just goes along. Like I just made a video about how I'm a roadie. And I think that to like somebody on the outside, a label owner and a roadie are really far apart from each other on the work spectrum of music, you know? It goes back to me saying, like, I don't know why I'd call myself the boss. I'm not the boss of anyone. And
unless you have a Marxist label.
Exactly. And I go out, and then I go out on the road. But one of the comments I got was a kid saying, "Oh, thanks for clearing that up." I mean, I was just saying how you need the roadies and the crews and everything make the magic happen, you know. And this kid said to me, "Oh, thanks for clearing that up. I thought that those were," and he said, I don't think he was trying to be shitty, but he was like, "Oh, I just thought that those were like people without talent still wanted to seem like they were making a difference," and it was like. And this is how nice I am. I'm like, he didn't mean to be condescending, right? because I'm just see the best in people. I'm like, I think he just, wrote that wrong. But he was being really honest, too. He was just being raw with me. Like, I look at a guy loading gear and I think, wow, you should have fucking practiced harder. And that's not the case at all.
I've seen
all.
I've seen certain write-ups to that point about there was something that it goes viral every fucking year, and it's this guy's like lists of things not to do on tour, and one of the things the person had said was like, don't bring a crew person, a roadie, a tour manager, a merch person, because they were like, that's generally a person with no talent that just wants to drink all the beer and not do anything.
A no talent person who wants to drink all the beer will be employed for one tour.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And that's it. I mean, there's so much more. There's actually, especially the more, basically the more fans a band has, which equals more time on the road, more shows, more opportunity, the more they need a solid crew to make sure everything runs smoothly, And obviously, you have to do that yourself for a really long time. I mean, some bands longer than others and some not. And some bands have to do all the crew stuff themselves for the entire existence. But the same. I've toured with Exodus. I've toured with Suicidal Tendencies. I've toured with a lot of. I'm going out with Testament next month.
You're doing the Testament?
Yeah,
tour.
we're doing the Testament tour. And
is that Necrot?
No, that's with all my roadie works with Municipal Waste. Yeah,
I did see that.
Those bigger bands, they share people. There's less than a dozen guys who are employed all the time. And they jump from Mastodon tour to Exodus tour to Machine Head tour to, Body Count tour. And that's the thing. It's not like there's just a bunch of fucking guys who play guitar okay and like to drink beer. Like, not at all. Yeah. My very first tour as a guitar tech, which I don't know how to play guitar, but I know how to tune a guitar. My very first tour as a tech, I was working with Gary Holt's techs.
Jesus.
Oh, shit.
And, I'm old enough now that I don't get intimidated by people. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a difference there. I know I would have felt differently at 21 than 40 going out with those guys or whatever, And there's actually a lot of advice that I give that I know that I wouldn't be capable of doing as a younger person. And so I try to have a lot of empathy for that, too.
The tech world, actually, a good friend of ours is a tech. He actually is around here. You might even know him. He techs for Slayer and Mastodon and Rancid.
Yeah.
And see, if you're good at one job, I like I've had tour managers try to poach me, but Municipal Waste plays enough shows in a year, and I have the label and my other interests that I don't take any other jobs.
Which is beautiful. Yeah,
it's great. I mean, that's the thing. But I mean, if I didn't have the label, I would be looking for tours, Like if that was that's the thing. Like nothing, I don't have like one main job, I have like a handful of things that I do that I'll accumulate into this one thing that's kind of just kept me supported and work and helping people create this whole time.
Which is one of the things you had said on one of your posts about, I can't remember what. Maybe you were just making a post about people not touring or being afraid to tour, but you were saying there's all these things you can do if you want to go out on the road. You can do this, and you can rent your van out and make some money on the side. And you can. I'm
all about the extra side hustle for a band because you shouldn't. Well, not that you shouldn't. You got to do what you got to do, but. It's nice for me to think of bands that can figure out a way to just pay for their studio, pay to go out on tour, these aren't huge expenses, but they're expenses.
Yep.
And so if you really mind the things that you're doing, you can have a band fund. But like I said, I started by making 1-inch buttons. I mean, the amount of bands I met because I was the guy making 1-inch buttons. That was something I never even calculated. Mm-hmm. I thought I was going to make 1-inch buttons because I could sell them for $1 a piece. I met some of my closest friends today because I was a fan of their band. I made 15 fucking 1-inch buttons with their band's logo on it. this is early, having to find a good fucking JPEG online too. in 2000,
Wow.
you know, that I can print
Damn
out
it, it's
something that's
pixelated.
that I can print out something that's 1 inch. But really going up to a band at a show and handing them 15 buttons and being like, "Hey, I make these," but I'm not asking you to hire me. I'm just saying I make these, so I made these for you because I like you guys.
That's dope.
That's cool.
I met so many people like that. I didn't even know. And then when I first started touring, that was it, dude. Because I mean, even in the smallest shows, you show up to a basement in, you know, Joliet, Illinois, and I can unfold on the coffee table in the living room a piece of cloth with 100 different buttons on it.
And yeah.
You
Side
know,
hustle.
like, oh wow, people, and that brings, and stuff like that, it brings people over to merch to sell them your shit too. You know, if they
Always
see something
dropping
they
game.
recognize, they see something they're familiar
Scotty's
with.
always dropping game.
And I was doing buttons, like I was like, what? I was like, you could put anything on a button. Anything out, skateboard companies, beers, Simpsons characters, any band I could think of.
So
hip hop.
To that point, another thing I admire you about, a couple records ago, I think for Ghoul, I think you were the guy that decided to do the game on the record, right?
No, the band thought of that.
They thought of the game?
I was the one who paid for it.
That game, I thought, was like one of the most genius things.
Yeah.
It's a great example of, you know, I don't know what the name of this era is going to end up being called, but in the streaming era and the decline of record sales, by the way, if you could have sold 400 records last week, you would have landed at number 200 on the Billboard chart.
So another thing Scotty does is Scotty randomly will tweet out.
No, it's not random. It's every Wednesday.
Is it every
the numbers
Wednesday?
Come in. If I check it, if I'm not on tour, usually I always
It's
see
like
it on
I'll see.
Wednesdays.
It's like if you sold 200 records this week, you'd be on number 200 on Billboard, and that's the shit
Damn.
that makes me go, "Wow, come on!"
And when
let's go hard."
I started doing that only like 2 years ago, it was always over 1,000, and I thought that was
That's still
encouraging.
really, yeah, that's
You
still
know,
low.
like, hey, get it, because that includes pre-orders too.
yeah,
So, and I thought that was encouraging for bands, because it's like it's two things at once. For me, I'm giving out those numbers to be encouraging to small bands, like, wow, we can really do something, because I've hit Billboard charts with my fucking label, and even though it's all bullshit and you're only selling 1,000 records, it's like, wow, it's really like shows something, you know? It's
what's the highest you've charted for any artist?
Ghoul was in, I don't remember their note. They were like in they were in between 150 and 200
No shit.
on the album chart.
Wow.
And Necrot hits, and then they were on a bunch of other charts where they were at like the Heat Seeker chart, the vinyl chart, the indie chart. In one of those, they were maybe like the vinyl chart was maybe in the top 10.
Was that
week.
record? Was it the game?
Yeah, because
record?
I don't want to lose. I want to talk about this record
Yeah.
because I'm bringing it all around. But yeah, and then Necrot hit some of those other weird charts like hard rock and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the amount,
Another great band on your label.
the amount of records that Ghoul sold to be like number 170 or something like that, whatever we were, would have put them in the in the top 50 this week.
No shit.
Yeah. So when I started doing that, it was always over 1,000 to get into the 200, and it held at like 600 after a serious decline all last year. And this is not going to be the average because the beginning of the year is traditionally the worst sales for everyone, and not a lot of big releases come out too, so competition is really low. But there's been 4 charts out this year, and they all have been under 500 to make it, to hit number. And then this week it was only like 1,300 to get in the top 50.
Wow.
We see when I yell at you guys about we need to go record, we need to release this next record.
Back around to the board game, which was the guy's idea. Here's how I know that more people, it's a weird little metric. Here's how I know that a shit ton of people bought that record for the board game is because it's the #1 release on my label of redeemed download cards.
Really?
Download cards only get about a 10 to 15% redeemed. That was like 48, 49% of download cards were redeemed on that Ghoul record.
Wow.
So that shows me how many people that don't even have a record player or don't, because I mean, I just don't use my download cards. I play vinyl. They annoy the shit out of me. They
That's
keep getting
another
stuck
thing
when I'm
about-
taking my records in and out of the jacket until I just finally throw them away.
The releases that you have, I love the Necrot artwork. I also love those dudes.
Yeah.
We've definitely. Well, what's the other band that he's in that we played with?
Sonny's in?
Yeah, that Sonny's in that we played with in.
man.
What's the other band Sonny's in?
Sonny was in a great band called Saviors, a great band
Yeah.
called Word Salad. But currently, that other, like that heavy, like that hard rock band
Yeah.
that he's
Rock,
playing
yeah,
in,
totally.
Yeah.
is it Man Back?
Yeah.
Is that what they're called?
it's Man
It's something like
something.
that. Yeah, I think it's like Man
Yeah.
Back. Or something. Yeah.
We played with them in Crockett. But anyway, the artwork on that record was what got me before I even saw the game.
Yeah.
Because they had done the photo shoot for that here.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing the artwork and I was like, whoa, this is badass. And then when I opened it up and saw the game, I was like, these motherfuckers are insane.
Yeah.
And this is genius strategy because how do you get people to want to buy your product in, was that 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
Yeah, and it's still selling. And I have to keep reminding people that the board game wasn't part of some. People are really accustomed now to, if there's something really, really cool and extraordinary besides like wacky splatter vinyl, that you're not going to be able to get it. Too many bands and labels are making things to be talked about that no one actually owns because they make them so few and it sells out so fast.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So that record. I still press another 1,000 copies every. I pressed 1,000 copies last year. Again, 2 years out. So it's all the Ghoul records seem to repress every 2 years. Like really, they stay at work. They have a loyal fan base. It slowly grows.
They have a loyal
There's
fan base.
never anything like popping off, but they have the kind of fans that wanna own all 4 albums and the extra EPs. And not a lot of bands are on labels that will keep their entire back catalog in print. So that's
Yeah.
another thing about Ghoul that's different than other bands. If you get into them today, you can find all their records new. You can just buy them from me. When you have a long career, a lot of bands, once you jump labels, the old label's never going to repress your shit on vinyl unless
They could do a
unless you're,
reissue
and
with
unless
something.
you're really big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's just the way vinyl sells. You know, it's like it's hard to keep one of the hardest parts is selling back catalog vinyl in print because there's no big pre-order bump.
Do you
There's no big
release?
stuff
Are you
like
are
that.
you vinyl only? Your label?
No, I do CDs,
CDs and-
tapes. You know, and now I mean,
Is it whatever the artist wants, or do you have a good idea about what's the best to release per the artist? So if an artist comes to you, you like said artist, and you say, "Okay, artist X, I'm going to release your project. I think you guys should go CD first."
everybody always wants vinyl. I actually have been the one to turn down the CD.
Gotcha.
I'm the one that tells a band you don't need a CD.
Gotcha.
Or if we did a CD of the last record and we're doing another record, I'll go, you already have a CD. It's of the last record.
Yeah.
And that's your CD.
Yeah.
Because we still have them. Because your fan base didn't come out for that format. So, you know, because bands will say, well, we still sell them at shows. And I'll go, okay, good. Keep selling this CD at shows.
Yeah.
The
and
one I have all the
new
boxes
album.
of.
And we'll put the new album out on vinyl, which was a format that your fans were more into, you know?
I think I saw you post something about that, like how to know if you should release vinyl. We have some friends that invested way too much money in a bunch of vinyl
Yeah.
and had to sit on it for a minute.
They're still sitting on it.
It's
And
hard,
that's one of
man,
those
because
unfortunate
it's
things.
like I mean, really, if a band is self-releasing something, it should be like 250 copies or something like that. But the price point's like the breakage at 500 and then at 1,000. It's like, in a band, this is what a band will do. Really naively, will say, okay, but if we get 1,000,
it's cheaper.
they're only $6 a piece.
Right.
And if we get 300, they're $9 a piece. So come on, guys, what are we doing? And then you do this thing where you bring home all the records and you go, fuck yeah, guys, we got 1,000 records. We sell them for $20 a piece. You do the math. We're basically sitting on bricks of gold. It's one of my what's one of the first pieces of advice I like to give to anyone who wants to start a label and bands that want to start their own label. And where we're at now, I think every band, I think actually even labels looking at a band are going to appreciate a band that's already self-released. But you have to look at it as not money. It's not money. The money's gone. You don't turn money into CDs. You turn money into no money. And then you have CDs.
Well, let me ask you this from a band that self-releases everything. We've only self-released EPs. We figured why.
I think I also that's also what I say, because like a lot of bands want to put out their perfect album, and if you make the perfect album and it like doesn't hit right away, things move so fast. And then even if you do get a label's attention, like they're gonna want something new.
Yeah.
And so, and what's great about EPs, and especially when they're self-released, is all those songs are fair game to be re-recorded for your album.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times, a self-released EP will be recorded before you really go out and play a lot of shows. The show playing often happens after, and those songs get better.
Yeah.
Some parts get faster, some parts slow down. The singer
You
finds...
can't see this right now, but I'm pointing at Alex because
The
we've had
singer
this
finds
conversation.
their cadence.
Oh, yeah,
the drummer maybe finds a new fill or something. The way they're more comfortable after
It's
you
like
do
he was
it.
listening to our catalog.
Dude,
and
we
saw the
talk
live
about this
show.
all the time. Yeah.
I just think it's really common. I think all musicians can relate to this.
It's funny because that was like an argument that we had because we wanted to record everything and then we kind of wanted to do it in the studio, and then I'm very impatient.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look, we can put out 3 songs now and 1 song next month and 2 songs 2 months from now. We can record as much as we want to record. We fucking live in a goddamn studio.
Yeah.
And I felt like nobody gave a shit. So I was like, fuck it. I'll do it. Come on. Let's do it. We're going to record it.
I'd love to see. I'm really surprised this hasn't happened. This idea I'm about to share with you. I'm shocked. Every year goes by and this hasn't happened. I'd like to see a punk band only release singles and only record and release 1 song at a time. And with that, you can really keep your finger on the button of social and cultural events and be really like a fucking, like be just part of the conversation every day.
That's what there was a rapper I saw on Talib Kweli's.
It's totally, I'm stealing it from hip hop. I don't know why somebody who plays a guitar
weeks.
hasn't
He had
done this yet.
52 songs.
Oh, wow.
He had a song a week every day of the year. That was kind of, to your point, that's what our original plan was to do.
Yeah.
Because I actually sat here and wrote 2 hours worth of material. And I was like, well, let's get together and let's record it properly all together. It didn't work out the way we wanted to, but we got to the point where it was like, all right, this song is done. We're putting it out. And then we did a tour of Brazil this past summer. And instead of just going there with CDs of what we already had recorded, we actually recorded music just for Brazil.
Nice.
Yeah.
And had a Brazil-only CD.
And we did that on this last tour,
Yeah,
too.
and we were like, we're not even going to take them home.
Just leave them in Brazil.
We leave it like
Yeah,
that.
we did.
It can never come back with us.
Yeah.
Like we play
It's
this
never going
songs.
online. It's just
Yeah.
for the tour, yeah.
I think what I don't want to say holds back because it doesn't necessarily hold back, but would hold back an artist from some of these ideas is the idea, and this is for any artist, the idea that you complete a project, a piece of work, and when it's done and you move on. And this is where hip hop looks at music differently than guitar music, where it's like, no, you can make a song a week, and the ones that no one likes, just fucking get rid of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Get rid of them.
Yep.
No, those ones don't hit, dude.
Yep.
Lean in towards the ones. Keep a thing from this one that worked and move it with this. I mean, I don't know if that would be a success, but I'd love to fucking see it. You know, I've thought about doing it myself, just to make content, like to make some example, just to inspire other people to do it.
It's almost like rock doesn't look at what other genres are doing because it is the grant, right? It's like rock is like the foundation. It's like I don't have to look at what DJs are doing or what hip hop is doing. It's my Bernie Sanders rock. But you know, there's again working in the festival world when you work with DJs, and I work at these big rap shows, and I seem like, damn, how do these guys do? Oh, they just release songs, and it doesn't matter if they have a physical copy of this song or not. It's only going on Spotify.
And you can take it down anytime
you want.
Yeah, totally.
And or what they call them, SoundCloud rappers, and I almost say it like a joke, but it's like, you know what? Go look at those guys' numbers on SoundCloud.
Well, here's something for better or for worse, that the whole kind of just rock genre did. Like every technology that's happened since I've been involved in underground music has been pushed back on by metal, rock, punk. CDs, no.
Yep.
That was like that,
Yep.
and I was too young for that to happen where, like, in my life, but I'm aware of it. Cell phones. I remember when you wouldn't bring a cell phone to a show, and then you start seeing, like, they pop up like, oh shit, is that okay now? Like, punks have phones. Can I do that? Because I've wanted one. I mean, it seems like an intelligent piece of technology, but I just didn't know if that was cool for us to have or not.
And that's why they missed out on the whole ringtone boom.
Yeah, I mean, the pushback against streaming, the pushback against smartphones, the pushback against social media. On the contrary, kids doing hip hop saw the smartphone and everything that came before it, but especially the smartphone for what it is, which is a bullhorn to the fucking world. That doesn't mean anyone's listening, but they kind of, hip hop as a genre caught on. I mean, they're light years ahead of punk and metal on this. Caught on, like, just knowing, like, oh, this shit's in everyone's pocket.
Yeah.
And they're looking at it most of the day. I just need them to look at me a little bit.
Isn't that what Jay-Z did when he put his album on, I can't remember which phone it was. One of the phones.
Yeah, that motherfucker put his album on a phone when when phones still flipped.
Right?
Right?
Yeah.
It was like a flip phone. That was like early shit. Because that was even like, I don't think that streamed. I think it like that was when phones started
with the phone. Yeah,
it was like when they put a mini iPod in the corner of your flip phone.
Yeah,
and
it was
like
some,
100
it was
songs
some
on
shit.
there.
I remember he did that. I couldn't tell you the year. Which is frustrating because when you do have these ideas, I feel like music right now is the Wild West, and you can kind of do whatever you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the downside to that is you kind of knew who the gatekeepers were back in the day, and there was a bit of a hierarchy. And now it's kind of, I don't know why certain people hit and who's not
and
hitting.
it seems like nobody knows.
How do you get through the noise? Do you still have to go out and tour? I went out. I talked to the guys about this. I actually do some volunteer work for a man that's running for Congress against Nancy Pelosi.
Okay.
Shahid Buttar, and I went out and canvassed for him, which I had never done before. I knocked on people's doors that I did not know.
Oh, yeah, that sucks.
And goes, hey,
Good for you.
who are you voting for? Vote for this guy because he's legit. And after doing that, I thought about musically. I was like, we don't do enough. Don't think Facebook is enough.
No.
Don't think putting flyers here at Soundwave is
I like
enough.
this. I like because you're like, motherfucker, I knocked on doors.
I knocked on doors, and I didn't get yelled at too much, but it takes a certain level of balls to say it's bigger than me, and I'm gonna, because everyone was nervous. We were all newbies to canvassing, and they give you a script and say, "Oh, by the way, do not have that in your hand when you go talk to these people." So I totally forgot everything, and had to, from the heart, tell people why I think they should vote for this man. And coming back to the band, I was like, look, we don't do enough, because I literally just did what it takes to get to people. And I think social media, you can put a Facebook post up, you can get on Twitter and get some likes, get some retweets or whatever, but really getting it out to the people. We just did a tour. We did, what was it, 20
shows,
22
like
shows in 23 days or some shit like that. And again, that's everything changed. All of our metrics changed on social
everything
media.
changes.
The plays
I
went
watch
up.
it with the bands. You can, and that's what's crazy about public numbers now. Is it just cuts through the bullshit. Everybody knows how many people, how popular you are.
You can see, we have a great show in this town. Oh, all
And
the
then you
people
see
in
it go, you're
Montreal
like,
are
oh,
listening.
yeah, right.
Brazil. Oh, you got all these fans in Brazil now because you were in Brazil for a month.
Yeah.
Like, you see that canvassing, touring, it's the same thing. That's why all these people flew down to Iowa to knock on doors for Bernie Sanders, because it actually does make a difference to connect with people. Is it hard for you? Because I feel your label has some success. I'm not going to get into the in-depths of how well you're doing, but I can see it. I can physically see it by the success of the bands, the tours they get to go on. Do you ever have to have quote unquote pep talks to certain bands to get them out there, or do
Yes.
they? Okay.
Yeah, I absolutely do. I absolutely coach up the bands. I've had conversations on the phone like, "Hey, you're talking about you're working on the new record? Like, y'all haven't posted anything online in a month. What makes you think you should be making a new record right now? You have a record." Stuff like that, you know? Like, oh, you guys have to go tour. No one's going to buy this fucking record. And, like, what's happened now is actually with the label is I'm trying to work with less bands because now it's so tight. You only got to sell 500 records to get on the goddamn Billboard chart. Jesus Christ. I drive past I live like right on the Oakland-Berkeley border. So in my daily routine, I walk past a thing that says Oakland, 300,000 people, Berkeley, 150,000 people. And I go, we're just trying to sell 1,000 records out here, B. Fuck.
We just
There's
need
300,000 there's 1 million people in the Bay. I'm trying to sell, basically a Spotify stream percentage royalty worth of the population of this motherfucking metropolis to buy our shit. You have to. I used to say you got to play 50 shows a year, which would be like one U.S. tour and then
some local shows,
5 local shows and maybe a regional weekend or whatever. Now I'm like, you got to play 100 shows.
I did it.
And I know everyone can't play 100 shows. And so now I'm like, and if you can't play 100 shows, that's good. Let me see how else I can help you. But it's not with a LP, CD, PR campaign, worldwide distribution,
how do you
shipping,
feel about-
pre-order, rollout.
about PR at this point. How do you feel about PR campaigns? I've paid for PR for small companies. I remember when my last band was first getting started, we met the dude that did PR he broke Odd Future, Tyler the Creator, and those guys, and he wanted to get in stuff that wasn't hip hop. So he was working with us.
Did he end up working with Trash Talk? Is that the guy? I know.
Is it Black Dye?
Yeah, well, Trash Talk ended up signing to Odd
their
Future's
label,
label. Yeah. So
He
I
might have-
always figured that came through.
He
like,
was they're LA guys, right?
Yeah.
He was an LA guy. He was cool. He got us on MTV, The Hive, which was their site. This is the early 2010s. But we didn't have a product he got us featured, but we didn't have like CDs in the spots where you get CDs or music where you get music.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about PR is you have to have a story and people have to care about it.
Yep.
So it's like, I know it sounds like an endless fucking infinity cycle into hell, but if no one knows who you are, no one knows who you are, no one cares to read about you.
Some of these
it's like
stories
trying to
suck,
get a
though.
job where there's like, you have to have experience to get this job. But this is an entry-level position.
But some of those stories, I think we're talking about, I don't know if one of these shows we were talking about it, I was like, man, some of these stories for some of these bands are stupid. Like, I don't care about
Well,
this
that's the
band.
thing. So it has to resonate with people. So I have a PR company on retainer, and they just do anything that I shoot at them. And here's another thing about musicians. Every band on my label knows that if they have anything they want to talk about, even if it's just a local show, they don't even have to reach out to me. I provide a publicist and a designer for all the bands, and the bands can go right through me. I always tell them, copy me in on the email or it'll get ignored, which is funny how a band will be like, hey, I emailed so-and-so 5 times and they didn't get back to me. I go, did you copy? I didn't get any of those emails. Copy me in. They copy me in, and then the reply comes like within the hour, you know? So I supply that to the bands, but all that really is, all you should look at PR as is a press release generator. They can take whatever information you gave there and make it readable and with a couple hype words in there.
Mm-hmm.
And send it out to their mailing list. This is what you're paying for. You're paying for the PR company's mailing list. They can get it into the inboxes of the people who may be able to give you some press. But
That's
that
a
inbox is
crapshoot.
full every morning.
That's
Yeah,
a
that's still
crapshoot in
a
itself.
total crapshoot. So it's still, so you can't rely on that itself. But if that's in the inbox of somebody who also noticed, also saw a sponsored Instagram post for your tour around that same time, and something else, like if somebody sees your name a couple times, and then they're getting it sent to them from somebody they know in like the press community, it's giving you a little. It's giving you this much more of a chance than if you just
Blind
cold
email
call.
them, yeah.
You're not cold calling people. You can still get rejected, but that's the thing. And then if you do your research, you should be able to find a PR company that can get you some sort of premiere or stream or something like that. But buyer beware. Just because Decibel Magazine or fucking Metal Sucks streams your fucking embedded Bandcamp link and if you're lucky, doesn't just copy and paste
your press release.
If you're lucky, somebody who's probably not getting paid because it's such a daily just site update, will take the time to write something mostly ill-informed about your music before they have to shit it out that next day, So it's the same thing. The press person can help you get your name on the internet more times, but if you're not doing more work, people aren't gonna.
I was told if you're not touring, it's really hard to
touring
get press.
is the work.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the work, but then there's other cool ways. I mean, like, this is great. Doing a podcast as a band, like, I think what you guys are doing is really smart. I like what you said before, how it came up in the van. I think a band should do a podcast in the fucking van.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. That can, you guys could do that,
That's the plan for when we're touring.
I was talking about things you can do, but by not touring, but it's staying that active.
Yeah.
If you're still getting together every week, make a video. You don't got to make a music video. Make a 15-second video that tells somebody what you're doing. Like, and that in itself is not going to give you the same kind of attention that touring does, but you got to keep the fans that you're making on the hook.
We wanted to do
Always.
something that was engaging because, like I said, we wanted to be not trying to sound too arrogant, but it's the soul of this genre. So we want to engage with people because when we play live, we engage with people. So when we're not touring, when we're not playing, like now, you can't engage with people. I can make some Facebook posts.
Yeah.
I write. But that engagement's also it's a different person almost. So it was like let's have the same conversations we have in the van.
Yeah.
And hopefully, because of where we're located in this studio, we could probably get guests.
Yeah. And generate content that's interesting.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That people can respond back to, give us their opinions on. Because we also make playlists after.
See,
we're going
that's
to make
great.
a Tankcrimes playlist after.
Fuck yeah. But also, it's not like, you're not like being greedy. Like, hey, give us attention. This is our song. This is our song.
Yeah.
This is our merch.
Yeah.
This is our merch.
Yeah, that can get
Everything
annoying,
that you
too.
just said is great. Like, hey, we have access to all these people. I think as a band, we're pretty fucking thoughtful and have some decent ideas that we want to share. That's not shaking a fan or a stranger and saying, buy,
Yeah.
consume, buy. Saying, hey, I think it's thoughtful, you know?
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's cool.
And we're putting on our first show next month that will not have us perform at it. Bitter Lake Presents.
Oh, I like that too.
We're trying to stay active, man.
Yeah,
The
I
whole
like that
thing is
too.
stay active. I love being in. This sounds weird. I love being in a van, even at this advanced age. I love the people that I'm in a van with.
Yeah.
I got to dive into the crowd in Montreal. That means there's people there to catch
There's
you.
people there to catch. Yeah, you
Right?
can't dive into a crowd when
You
there's a big
can't
horseshoe in front of the stage.
No, you
No
can't.
diving into that.
No, you can't. So I want to keep this up. And actually, weren't you looking at a band the other day from Ohio? Who was the band we played with in Columbus? The husband and wife.
Body Farm.
Body Farm.
Yeah.
those
We
guys
played
are
with
cool.
them.
Dude, I know them, which is so funny. Is
From
he's from Ventura,
yes.
Ohio.
They
Yeah.
know. So Annihilation Time used to be behind us.
Yeah,
Or
yeah, of
Lecher's
course.
Case. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's dude. Eric, his fucking nickname was Boner when I met him. I will always fucking know him as Boner.
I wish we would have known that when we
I
went
didn't
down.
know
Yeah, and he booked our shows. I met him. He booked a show for Votsec, mine and Amy's old band. Which, by the way, I don't know if I filled you in on this. Did you know Benny from Ghoul was in Votsec with me and Amy?
No.
Yeah, there's your I didn't catch that you had figured that out yet, or anyone had filled you in.
No.
Yeah. Amy, Ben from Ghoul, and I, and our friend Athena, who also owns a record label, we had a band called Votsec. And that's
Amy
what it
did.
was.
Amy, we hung out with Amy for hella long.
Yeah, she was cool.
So effing cool. We had some issues. I don't know if she told you about that tour, but Amy is the shit.
Yeah.
Her venue is the shit. I didn't
Lounge.
know. I didn't realize that our other guitar player Todd bought a Cobra Lounge shirt, like,
tight.
and then
Oh,
wore it
yeah.
on stage at the last show we played. Like, I don't think you understand. Like, at that moment, we needed to meet Amy.
Yeah.
If that means anything, we needed at that moment with that tour, we needed to meet that.
Oh,
person.
yeah, that's how shit like
Absolutely.
that works, right? They're there when you need.
And that's how we figured out who you were, because she was like, "Oh, I think she mentioned, like, are you guys on Tankcrimes?" We're like, "No,
Yeah.
we don't know that guy. Like, I know of that guy. We don't
Yeah.
know that guy."
She's
She
like,
made
"Oh,
some
you
jokes.
gotta talk to Scotty." Yeah.
Amy made some jokes about that, but Amy went into the whole VoteSec thing because I didn't realize Amy was Clitorati, and I didn't realize who Clitorati was until you were posting about, oh, this band Clitorati is doing all this stuff. And so usually when you post something like that, I'll go check it out. But yeah, you post something about Body Farm. You're like, this Body Farm band is all right.
Yeah, they're tight.
And they're one of the few bands that I actually get to see out there that are actually saying something about something. That isn't just demons and pentagrams. There's a lot of demons and pentagrams.
Mm-hmm.
I've had an ass full of demons.
There's a lot
and
of bands talking about shit too. Yeah, but Body Farm's great. Boner and his wife's band.
So funny because we're talking to them like, you guys from California? We're from California. And then we realized that they grew up with the Annihilation Time, Lecherous Gaze dudes. They were back behind us for a few years. So got to know those guys real well. And then we all went out to that little crazy hot dog spot.
We all had hot dogs.
He's like, we're going to take you guys to hot dogs. So, yeah, no, those
fun.
they're great people. I had no idea, that you would know them from Ventura.
Well, here's the thing. It's like, dude, now I've been doing this since 2000. I mean, 20 years.
117 releases, you said.
Yeah, I mean, and that really, I mean, it took me 5 years to do 10 releases. And then it took another 5 years to do 50. And then,
and now it's a machine.
Yeah, but I'm really slowing down. Like I said, I want to work with less bands. Because I also, this ties back because I love jumping all over the place and I love remembering talking about like who actually needs a label or why I find a label's necessary. It's not for everyone.
I agree.
Yeah.
You have to be putting in a certain amount of work to need a label. Mm-hmm. And the label has to be doing a certain amount of work to help the bands besides just uploading the shit to Bandcamp or packing the mail order to make it worth it.
I agree.
To even ask a band to put your name on the back of their record, to make that association, to basically partner. You know, I consider Tankcrimes a family, but each band and I are an individual team. Mm-hmm. Because
that says a lot because there's quite a few bands on that roster.
Mm-hmm. But it's like I have to do now. So here's another thing about Tankcrimes is I've never signed a band. I don't know. I don't accept demos. All that isn't because I'm some old grouch. All that is just my resources. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of money, and I don't work for money. I work for growth. But the money I spend and the time I put into it, I want more than a song to take away from it. And as I can go from a casual friend to a family member with a musician mm-hmm. because we're working on projects together, that's what's rewarding to me. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't be as rewarding if I didn't have a personal relationship with the people in the bands.
Have any of your bands left to sign larger deals?
Yeah, Cannabis Corpse went to Seasons of Mist Records, and I encouraged them to do that. They were ready.
Mm-hmm. They're based overseas, right?
No, they're from Richmond, Virginia. Oh, Seasons of Mist, it's a French label that also has North American offices in Philadelphia. So I went from encouraging bands to step up. One time I asked a label that I admire, Robotic Empire, what their secret to success was at the time. This was probably a decade ago. Mm-hmm. And because they seemed to be doing really well. And what one of the owners told me was, get your bands to move to bigger labels and keep their back catalog in print and let somebody else do all the work.
The Lookout Records.
And what you do though is be the label that will keep the back catalog in print, and you can kind of piggyback on that. I mean, everything I've done's been jumping coattail to coattail. Mm-hmm. I mean, everything is that. And and I try to, stick my hand down the ladder when I can. But you need to hop off stuff like that. Yeah, my brain just got stuck. It's too much. We're talking about too much.
That's really cool.
Oh, you're looking at what the label can do for you. So if a band's not willing to do so many shows, I mean, I don't think a band that doesn't want to go on at least 2 tours a year needs a label for sure. Like 2 national tours
fair.
a year.
Yeah.
I really think that's kind of where you're at. So like a band can say, like, okay, how involved are we? And if you want to play 50 shows a year, I think that you could use some help. As a band could use help with that. And then hopefully you can partner up and find the thing, because what the label's doing then is a label is kind of a tastemaker. I mean, I certainly have people that follow what I do and are interesting, but there's also a fine balance. And this is the other thing to consider when you're looking at labels, is how many artists they work with at a single time and how much attention you're going to be able to get. Because 2 years ago, I put out 4 debut albums in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really squeezing my fan base.
Really?
It's really was hard for me to say, hey guys, I know I just introduced you to a brand new act and asked you to follow all their pages and listen to their music and check out their tour dates and all this stuff. Here I am with another thing you've never heard of, and I need you to give it all your attention. And I did 4 debut albums in a row, and I watched the attention fall off with each one.
It's interesting you say that. With the last thing my last band did, we had recorded an album and we sent it to Ipecac.
Okay, great label.
And a very Ipecac only email. It was not cut and paste.
Yeah.
It was like, this is to this label. I like all the artists on here. We've actually toured with some of your people on here. And they responded. And they said, you're right. This is the perfect release for this label. But we are no longer releasing new artists. We're only going to release projects from people that we've worked with before.
That's interesting. A, it's interesting to know that, because B, I totally get that.
Yeah.
I think that, and I'm going to get to where I'm going, I think that's part of what's going to be sustainability for labels moving forward.
They actually said that, and it wasn't a diss email. It wasn't a thank you for your It was like, hey, we're actually going to keep an eye out for you guys locally if you're doing anything, but it's not cost effective for us to do this at this time. And I couldn't get mad at that.
Yeah, and so looking back at my 4 debuts in a row. We did a Ghoul EP that year, and I did a Spaz reissue that year. I did 3 Spaz reissues and a Ghoul EP that year, and those all came out in the
red,
the first the first quarter.
Yeah,
3 Spaz records and a Ghoul record. So boom, that's actually how we had a bunch of money to put out 4 records. You know, it was like, I think that was the thought at the time. Oh, I'll do all this, and then there'll be a windfall of cash. I can pay a bunch of royalties, and we can work on these new projects. In hindsight, as a label, as a tastemaker label, I should have spaced all that shit back and forth. Dear Tankcrimes fans, please check out this new band. Thank you, Tankcrimes fans. Here's what you've been waiting for, a new Ghoul EP. Dear fans of Tankcrimes, please check out this new band. I think you're going to love them. Thank you. Here comes that Spaz reissue I know you've been lined up for. That's the thing, and that's what's really hard. And then also with the label, it's easier to be cool when you're new. It's hard to stay relevant. Like, that might sound backwards to people, but it's hard to stay relevant when I have over 100 releases. I have releases by bands that people will have never, ever fucking hear of unless they're searching my Discogs page, because punk is fleeting, and they came and went, and that's, you know, number 62 or number 25 or number 77. It's like,
do you remember Master P?
Of course I remember.
Are you a Bay native?
No, but I've been here I moved here when I was 19 to San Francisco, and I'm 42 now, so that eclipses the rural Michigan town I grew up in. I've done more for the Bay than I ever did for Michigan.
Do you say pop or soda?
Oh, I say pop. I'm from Michigan.
I just asked that question because I don't know if you remember, Master P had a record store in Richmond, California. But I don't know if you remember when he would release a project on the inside jacket of every CD he would release was the catalog.
Every artist, yeah.
And he had like 40 artists.
Oh, wow.
And he was like this, and they had the date for when they were dropping. It was like an artist a week. That was his whole thing. Like, I'm going to load the industry down with my artists.
And it's amazing. And what's great about that, which I wish that I could, I would love to find a way to do this, is with hip hop and like Master P and No Limit's a great example of doing this. I mean, he went out and found every talented person he knew in his area, and he put them all together in one room and said, who wants to work? And the people that wanted to work the hardest got the most attention and kept going. But what else he did was put artists on each other's tracks. He basically putting people on, you know? I mean, that's as old as anything, putting people on, hooking it up. Can
you do posse cuts and rock?
No, what I was going to say is our music doesn't really work like that.
You don't think so?
No, I don't. I mean, it can be attempted, but it's not going to have this. It's not going to have the same effect. I think our version of that is taking bands out on tour.
Okay. What about splits?
Kind of splits.
It depends.
Yeah, splits are hit and miss. It depend. There's so much energy all over the place with the split. You know, it's like works better. I like to do splits. Here's something. We'll show you where I'm at with splits. I always make the artist put one front cover. I never do a split where it's two front covers. And that's just part of my like theory towards the splits that makes it more of a partnership than just like this side of the 7 inches, this grindcore band. Oh, and there seems to be some other logo on the other side. Safe to assume they play grindcore.
That makes a lot of sense. That's interesting to do it that way.
Yeah.
Because the posse cut for like hip hop is huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
I really think it's taking bands out on tour. And when you're working at the level I am, I mean, you know, I do, you know, local showcases and festivals here where I can get all my bands. And, you know, people, the fans I do have, you know, always ask to take that out on the road. But that's the thing, operating at this level, for me to be able to get Ghoul and Necrot and Brain Oil to all be able to take the same month off work.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing.
The package tour, you can't do the Tankcrimes package tour just
And
yet.
that's really, to me, is the put on. And then for me, working with Municipal Waste, I mean, I submit Ghoul and Necrot for every Municipal Waste tour, obviously, you know, and it's come close to working, but it hasn't. And that's just something we'll keep trying, you know. But so that's where the label comes in. Who can they partner you up with that's going to get you attention? How can they bring that together? How can I Master P you?
That was it, man. And he ended up signing that huge, was it a distro deal? Who the fuck did he sign with? Was it Universal? He signed with some major.
He was one of
that.
the first. He was one of the first. If now what's become a standard deal
Yes.
is starting your own label as a hip hop artist, developing a small roster, or even just owning your own catalog on that, and then selling the whole label to a major instead of selling yourself as an artist. You sell your label to the major as a partnership, and then you're still signed to that label. It's really just deals get more artist friendly all the time, and as things get more and more transparent, hopefully that's going to be the case for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, but that world is so far away from what I'm doing. You know, but I pay a lot of attention to that. I actually, hip hop was the first music that I dug deep into, well before I was into punk.
Ditto.
Yeah. I mean, that was
Kindred spirits.
I mean, I used to, when I was a kid, I would stay up like one of the radio stations, WJLB in Detroit, was one of the first stations that had like a rap show. But it was like started at like 11 p.m. on Saturday night. It went from like 11 till 2 on Saturday nights. And I would stay up 10, 11 years old and tape that off the radio. And there were hip hop songs that I knew every word to. I didn't know who the artist was for years later. Years later, till I knew, you know, who that artist was, which was crazy. But that was right. I mean, right then, Hip hop was the first music where I was really just like digging, like, okay, like this dude's on this guy's thanks list. I got to check out his tape. This dude's on this
how I
guy's
found
thanks list.
everything,
Oh, here, this is guy's on the posse cut. I got to
Yeah.
get his shit. And then, really, to me, the greatest music television there ever was, as far as getting me engaged, was Yo MTV Raps. Because you had Dr. Dre and Ed Lover down in the basement on the weeknights, right?
R.I.P.
And they're just like
Dr. Dre.
paying. They're playing. They're mostly playing videos, or they'll have a stop by. But then on Saturday nights, you got Fab Five Freddy, who's gone to Compton to hang out
Yes.
with NWA.
Yes.
He has gone to Atlanta to sit down with Outkast. He is in Brooklyn with Tribe Called Quest. Like that, to me.
Did you know Fab Five was homies with Basquiat?
Yeah, I've since learned. I mean, since then, I've followed his career ever since then. I obviously didn't know that when I was a kid, but I mean, he's such a player, and everything that I
whole
developed
thing.
that's cool. Just the whole punk. I mean, like I said at the beginning, everything that makes American culture cool all started about the couple years before I was born.
Yeah.
Skateboarding, hip hop, punk rock, heavy metal.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's where we're at now. And so that's the thing. It's like, we were born in the 70s. Are we running this place yet? Hopefully. I mean, come on, Are
So
running
we
shit
had a
yet?
show, was it 2 weeks ago? We had a show, the big four of thrash metal, Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer. So we had this is what started a very interesting discussion in the van.
Yo, I vote for Exodus over Anthrax, by the way.
Word.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really?
It's a good point, man.
I like
we didn't
Anthrax,
consider
but
that.
Anthrax, I think, secured their spot in the big four, not from being the best thrash band, but for another reason, which makes them super cool, by being the most adventurous thrash band. By embracing MTV, by
Yeah.
doing the rap, by hooking up with Public Enemy, by doing I'm the Man, by doing the fucking weird B-sides on Killer B, by Scott Ian becoming a guy that every documentary called, or every VH1 show called, to do a thing. I think that they took their spot in the big four by being a bigger piece of pop culture.
I'll give you that.
So I like Exodus. But
I'll
now
give you
then I see it, but maybe it's Testament.
I think Exodus had. Fucking say this, I'm gonna see these people here some time, like literally.
One of them could be in the bathroom.
Like not even trying to be
Yeah,
funny.
like right at the bottom of the
I
stairs.
think Exodus had heavier records. I think if you take the first 3 Exodus records, those are some vicious, angry. I can put those on today, and those are still some vicious riffs compared to Anthrax, which I think was just better produced, tonally a little better sounding, in my opinion. This is just my opinion. But what I was going to ask you was, we had a show about the big four of hip hop.
Ice Cube, Slick Rick, Rakim, Big Daddy Kane.
Wow.
That's your big four.
I think
That's your Mount Rushmore. of
that was
hip-hop.
off the top. I mean,
I think
those,
you said
I
five.
chose those pretty quick. Because, let me think. Is there somebody that those are like the MCs.
I think
for
that show
me
was almost
that
2
are,
hours
like,
for us that day.
foundation.
Because the whole thing was like, I think we kind of ended it, and that was the show where a lot of people were like messaging us back.
Yeah.
Well, because for me to pick it, you have to pick from an early era, but not the first era.
But not
so
the
I think
first
you got
era.
to pick it from what we call the golden age or whatever. But the golden age goes up until the 90s, which I wouldn't qualify. I wouldn't. There's a lot of great MCs that I would just put on a second tier of top 5.
I say, because before I say Ice Cube, I say NWA, because Ice Cube comes from the NWA tree.
Okay.
And because of that, I won't put Snoop on there, because Snoop to me comes from the NWA
because he's
tree.
in that tree. Okay. Yeah, I
So
can play that
say,
game.
If we go from a tree and you go, okay, well, who is the foundation? Who's the roots of these other guys? Like, I want to say Nas, but then Nas really comes from the tree of Rakim. And Rakim, to me, kind of stands alone. Then, Alex was saying, what about Wu-Tang? What about Tribe?
See, to me, that just comes like the next. That's like
It's the next level.
it's like the next level.
It is kind
but
of a next
then
tier.
you want to do like hip hop's so cool because then you got to be like, well, nah, dude, those are groups. So now we're gonna say
Yeah.
Wu-Tang,
Yeah,
we're gonna
I've
say
said
Tribe,
that too,
and then
yeah.
you want to break it down more.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, but what about duos? Because we got Nice and Smooth. We got
Yeah.
Smith and Wesson. We got Kid and Play. It's like that was also part of the thing. And then don't get a duo that's a DJ and an MC mixed up with a duo that's
Black
two
Sheep.
MCs.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
No, then it was
You got
like,
Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock.
Do you have
got
to make
Eric
it-
B and Rakim.
do you make it regional then? Or do you make it by era? Because here's something crazier. Super Bowl happens. My daughter calls me up. I have a 21-year-old daughter who has a wonderful boyfriend I love to death. I want him to hear this on the air. And I ask him that question. They're 21. I don't like anything they like. Right?
Which is okay. You're not supposed to.
I'm
And
not
okay
supposed
with
to.
that. Yeah,
and
yeah.
and we say that all the time. They come to the shows. It's hilarious because she looks like a proud parent when she's at the show. So I asked him. I said, "Who's the big four of hip hop for you?" And he's like, "Well, what do you like? Who's my top four?" I was like, "Not your top four, but who do you think are like the big four of hip hop?" And he goes, "Huh?" And he's sitting there thinking about it. He's like seriously thinking about it, right? And he goes, "Got to be Soulja Boy."
Oh,
He's
no.
got Chief Keef, and I'm like, I don't know what you're saying,
Yeah.
but keep going, kid.
Well,
And it was the funniest.
I think
top
for
four.
contemporary hip hop, it's really interesting to ask who the big four is for contemporary hip hop and fans because as far as I know, I mean, any kind of music historian could probably tell me I'm wrong and give me a bunch of different examples, but it seems like hip hop is a genre where the current artists don't feel compelled to look backwards.
No.
That's really fucking interesting. And I know that bothers the shit out of some people. For me, it's different because everywhere I come from is like showing respect backwards. But that's maybe from a different culture or even a different hip hop culture from a different generation.
It's almost like, and I don't know how you feel about this. We also did an episode about nu metal.
Okay. I don't have a lot of reference to nu metal. I sat that one out.
I actually had I had asked a question the whole show, and I'll say this now because no one knows. The whole show I was asking people this question for about a year. And the question was, do you think the initial backlash of nu metal was race related? Because nu metal was quote unquote wigger music, which I find highly offensive. It was very urban in nature and in look. And there was a huge backlash to it. And not to say that I was the biggest fan of the genre, because I was not. But talk about moving stuff forward. It kind of felt like there was a bit of a forward movement where people weren't having to pay homage to their rock and roll predecessors. And they were kind of doing what they wanted to do. I didn't have to like all of it.
But I
Blending
still think if you
genres.
go like sit down with the guitar player of Korn, he's gonna tell you like how much like respect that he has for fucking Eric Clapton or something.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Totally.
But do they feel they have to say that? Because
But you might be onto something there. You might be onto something there that they might be compelled to do that because historically that's what artists before them have done.
Because the response I got from people, and I got a lot of written responses from artists, a lot of them that I got to befriend that are bigger than me, and their response was very, very interesting, especially when it ran different genders of people, what they had to say about that, and also age differences of people had to say about that was really different of how they responded to that music, because it was pretty jockey, douchey.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Korn. I remember first hearing of Korn the year I graduated high school, 1995. And that was also the year when I decided I was punk.
Yeah.
Like that was when like I went to a Rancid show when I was a senior in high school and came home and was like, all right, all other shit doesn't matter. This is what's exciting to me. And then, I mean, it was another 5 years or another 3.5 years before I moved to San Francisco and found like the real punk underground that I ended up thriving in. But so nu metal came out around that same time, and I just wasn't interested at all. And I was a huge hip hop fan too, and but like some of the things that spawned like nu metal are some of the coolest things ever. Like I think the Judgment Night soundtrack is maybe one of the coolest projects of the 90s.
Yeah.
For sure. And I
Yeah.
still go back to it all the time. And then it's like even before that, like
Dell and Jay Mascis.
yeah, that was sick, dude.
Yeah.
That was sick. even before that, like Metal Church played on Sir Mix-a-Lot Swass.
Oh, they did, because they're from Seattle.
Yeah, and that wasn't. I mean, and that obviously the most famous is Aerosmith and Run DMC, but that Metal Church Sir Mix-a-Lot wasn't that far after that. Historically, as far as like the rap rock thing, it really was when what really made it corny was when they stopped getting MCs.
I agree.
I mean, I did a split with Ill Bill and Ghoul.
I saw that.
I fucking was. I didn't bring you guys a copy. I meant to throw that in.
I remember
knew
that.
you
I
were a
remember
hip-hop
when that
fan.
happened, actually.
And then, like, everyone was super hyped on that project, and I was super stoked. But, I mean, what I really wanted to do was something Judgment Night style.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted Ghoul to write a song with verses and choruses.
Yeah.
That Ill Bill flowed the verses, that style, And I think that's what made nu metal corny is when there was this idea of like, let's have a rapper come play with our rock band.
And it's any old rapper.
When it started, a skilled MC come play with a skilled band. Well, fuck it, I'll just rap.
Yeah.
I'll grow some fucking dreads, B. Like, we're ready. Let's do this.
God.
I'll rap. We don't need an MC, dude. I can rap.
It was really so we make a, like I said, we make a playlist for every show, and the nu metal playlist. When we were trying to figure out, which was a very hilarious conversation. I wish we would talk about recording things in the van. I wish we recorded that because we're trying to think of who's a nu metal band.
Yeah,
because we could put 15 Korn and Deftones songs on there and other bands that I kind of dig, but I don't know Spine, Shank, and
I mean, there's a bunch I don't know. I mean,
all that other shit.
Yeah, one thing you can say about that is I actually saw like a headline. I think it was obviously like a clickbait type headline, but it still rings true. It was like one of the Korn guys saying like we were the last genre of like extravagant rockers. Like where like there's not going to be another like band that can play an arena that comes from like the extreme side of rock or something like that. Which might be true. I mean, it's an arrogant fucking thing to say.
Well, it
there's
hasn't
some truth
happened in a
behind
while.
it, but yeah, I mean, it hasn't.
We were having a conversation about this in New Mexico when my buddy Pasquale came over, and he was in for a short time in Fear Factory.
Okay.
And we're having this conversation about same conversation about nu metal, and Rage Against the Machine came up. You had fell asleep with this.
Yeah, I was passed out. I was so tired.
And he goes, they had a lot of things people wanted. You want the message? They had the message. Mm-hmm. You want the heavy? They were heavy. You want a groove? They had groove. You want catchy?
Yep.
Despite what he's talking about, those choruses were rather catchy.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
He goes, that's how you sell 5 million records, 10 million records as
It's a hook.
as a heavy ass band doing really weird experimental stuff on guitar.
Well, that's what else was cool about the 90s too, though. I mean, everybody, it was like Rage is a great band for that. I mean, look at it was just like there was a lot of bands that kind of blended stuff up, and that have like stayed part of the conversation ever since. And that's some 90s shit. Like, nobody right now is like, yo, let's do, like, some reggae, black metal. I think that'll be sick.
Yeah.
I think cats are scared. Yeah. I think cats are hella scared. Mm-hmm. I think cats are scared to do anything that doesn't fit into a very comfortable box.
Yeah, but I don't think they're not wearing it on their sleeve. I mean, you might be digging in super hard, because the other thing is if you're playing music, like you want to be liked, dude, So it
That's
is
what
kind of
it
like
is.
falling into a thing, but it's like you gotta have as much patience as you do guts to try to be the reggae black metal breakthrough band.
So Todd Huth used to be across the hall that was in Primus.
Sick.
I didn't really ask him too much about Primus. They're not one of my favorite bands.
Mm-hmm.
I dig them. But I did get to have an interesting conversation with him about the early days of that band. 'Cause you're talking about a band that definitely wasn't sounding like what was hot.
Yeah. But that was another band, like the 90s, like as soon as Primus had a video on MTV, they were part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Like, wow, like the bass is the lead instrument. Wow,
Yeah.
that guy's crazy.
But they had to like
Sailing the seas of cheese.
they had to
What?
go through some shit before they could get to that level. And so it's interesting when you get to be in these halls and talk to people about what they think works or how they got to where they are now. You know, how do you keep going? You know, because we see Faith No More from time to time. It's like, damn, y'all been doing this shit for like 30 plus years.
Yeah.
That's a hell long.
There's nothing that really compels you to stop if you're a real artist. And then B, it kind of, for better or for worse, becomes too late to do anything else. And I don't want
That's
that to
how I
sound
feel.
horrible because I don't know. I mean, we hold that dear,
Yeah.
you know? I'm like, what else am I going to do? I've only got 42 years left. So I might as well do what I did the first 42, you know? Who was in your top 4 hip hop?
Me personally?
Yeah. What'd you come up with?
Me personally, it's NWA, Rakim, and then I draw a huge blank, to be honest with you. Because then I start to go, okay, well, you have to put someone from that native tongue family on it because I think that changed hip hop.
So, like, I like Fife better as an MC, but Q-Tips obviously is so much more
force.
talented and really
Yeah.
the driving force. And then even when you read or watch films about Tribe Called Quest, you realize that like Q-Tip was like a studio tyrant.
Yeah.
He was like a stay up for 3 days, no one's going home.
And
studio guy.
I'm that guy.
Yeah, that's the guy who, you know.
I'm that guy. That's why that's why I dig Q-Tip so much because I lived here.
It's funny when you learn that because you're like, he probably just like skateboards to the studio or something with his backpack and then like pulls out some rhymes and just like smokes a spliff and like lays some shit down and then like skateboards home. Like maybe like meets a girl on the way home probably.
Not at all.
And it was like, nope. Lock myself in the studio for
De La Soul, definitely. I felt like I thought about it in records that I felt not just changed me because that's selfish, but I think records that changed the landscape of the music. And one thing that was also hard for me was I feel, and I've gotten into an argument with this about people. People always talk about Nirvana's Nevermind being this groundbreaking record, and it's a very important record.
good. I revisited it recently, like from front to back.
But
Still got some tracks.
in that same era, I feel that The Chronic really changed music because now you're talking about the way music is mastered, the way hip hop and which is pop music looks now since.
Yeah.
Even people think about rap music before The Chronic.
The Chronic was when kids in my high school. So I'd listened to rap since I was a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, I grew up in a more diverse suburb of Detroit, and then I moved out to a rural town for high school. When I got to the rural town, I was the only kid who liked hip hop. It had not got there yet. The Chronic changed that. I watched that firsthand. It was like the first rap song I ever heard out of the parking lot of my high school was that.
The Chronic, I remember we were excited for The Chronic here in the Bay. And then I can't remember which one of us actually bought it. You know, you waited in line we have the warehouse here, and got it. And then we went I remember we listened to Kevin Patterson's Car. And we knew it was going to be dope because Deep Cover had hit like a year before, which is a movie I just watched the other day with Phoenix Alex. Yeah. Deep Cover came on TV. I was like, cover your eyes, son. So we knew it was going to be crispy. And when you first hear those early skits and when the first beat kicks in, you're like, damn, it was so much louder. And we already turned everything up because we were excited to hear it because it was going to be so dope. We had to turn everything down. And then we got done listening to it, and you put in something else from that same era, you turn everything up. Yeah, because the mastering was so different on that record, and it just changed. That's when you get the mastering wars during that time. Yeah. And then you look at look at any photo album you have before that. And keep in mind, NWA drops before this.
Well, NWA was
Ice-T,
huge. I mean, those were
6 in the morning.
huge. Yeah,
but they were still touring with Biz Markie and MC Hammer. Not to say that made them soft. It was just rap.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everybody could get along. My first concert was Eazy-E, NWA, Michelle A, Oaktown's 357, MC Hammer at the Thomas and Mack.
357, get loose. Get loose.
Okay. I'm being told that
we're getting show notes from the producer.
We got to wrap. We got to wrap because we've gone too long.
That's cool.
I'll
come back.
We can have a part 2?
Yeah, for sure, man.
Okay.
I mean, you see how comfortable I am just sitting down and chatting.
So we're going to have a part 2. So we have to wrap. Maybe we'll record Why You Should Care on a different episode.
Oh, damn. We didn't even get to that.
We didn't even get to that, man. I was going to talk about the State of the Union and all the lies and inconsistencies in those numbers. Oh, well. Next time. Scotty.
There'll be a lot more lies and inconsistencies
It's just
coming from our government by next week, dude.
I wrote notes. And
yeah, those are going to be need to be amended. There'll be new information. And, certainly, nothing more could happen.
Then I have some quotes from a great book called Home Wreckers about the 2008 financial crisis. I was going to get all in depth.
Oh man.
Oh yeah, I had a good 15-minute spiel. But anyway, Scotty, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to have fun making a Tankcrimes playlist that's going to go up early tomorrow.
Sick.
And see you guys next week. And here's a song from us you've never heard.